The transport ship rattled as it dropped through the atmosphere. Sergeant Marcus Chen gripped his rifle tighter and tried not to think about where he was going. 3 months ago, he had been fighting Zephyrians in the burning ruins of New Shanghai Colony. Now he was being sent to guard one of them. The war was almost over. Everyone knew it. The Zephyrians had pulled back from human space after losing their main fleet at Kepler Station. Peace talks were happening on neutral ground, and both sides were being careful not to do anything stupid. That was why Chen had this strange assignment. "Listen up, Sergeant," Colonel Morrison had said during the briefing. "You're going to babysit a very important prisoner, the daughter of High Matriarch Vexera herself. She's 16 years old and she's our insurance policy during these peace talks." Chen had wanted to spit. Vexera was the alien leader who had ordered the glassing of 3 human colonies. Millions of people had died because of her, and now he was supposed to protect her daughter like she mattered. The transport touched down at Facility 7, a military prison built on a dead moon. Chen grabbed his gear and walked down the ramp. The base commander, Major Phillips, was waiting for him. "Sergeant Chen, good to have you here. I need someone I can trust for this job. The prisoner is in cell block C. She's been here for 2 weeks already." They walked through gray metal corridors. Chen had seen a few Zephyrians during the war, but only through his rifle scope. They were tall, with hard shells covering their bodies like armor. 6 arms each and faces that looked like insects. Most soldiers called them bugs or roaches. Chen had learned to think of them as targets. "Has she given you any trouble?" Chen asked. Major Phillips shook his head. "None at all. Barely speaks. Barely eats. Just sits in her cell and stares at the wall. The other guards think she's planning something, but I think she's just scared." They stopped in front of a thick metal door with a small window. Chen looked through the glass and froze. The girl inside didn't look like the monster he had expected. She was sitting on a simple cot, hugging her knees to her chest. Her shell was different from the adult Zephyrians he had seen. It was thinner, more like skin than armor. Her 4 arms were wrapped around herself like she was trying to disappear. When she looked up at the sound of footsteps, Chen saw something he hadn't expected. Fear. Pure, simple fear. "Her name is Lyra," Major Phillips said. "She understands English pretty well, but she doesn't talk much. Your job is to make sure she stays healthy and safe until the prisoner exchange. The peace talks could go on for months." Chen nodded, but he was still staring through the window. The girl had turned away when she saw them watching. Her shoulders were shaking. "What about the other guards?" "They do their jobs, but..." Phillips paused. "Some of them lost family in the colonies. They're not always as professional as they should be. That's why I need you here. You've got a clean record and good judgment." Chen had lost people too. His brother had been on New Manila when the Zephyrians glassed it. But looking at this scared girl, he found it hard to feel the same burning hate he usually felt for her species. They opened the cell door. The girl jumped and pressed herself against the wall, all 4 of her arms up like she was ready to be hit. Her big dark eyes darted between Chen and Phillips. "Lyra," Phillips said in a calm voice. "This is Sergeant Chen. He's going to be your new guard." The girl said nothing. She just stared at Chen with those frightened eyes. Up close, he could see that she was thin, too thin. Her shell had a gray color that didn't look healthy. "I'll leave you 2 to get acquainted," Phillips said, and left them alone. Chen stood by the door, not sure what to do. He had guarded prisoners before, but they were usually adult soldiers who tried to look tough even in chains. This was different. This was just a kid who looked like she expected him to hurt her. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly. Lyra tilted her head like she was trying to understand. Then she spoke for the first time, her voice barely a whisper. "You are human?" "Yeah, I'm human," she studied his face. "You have kind eyes." Not like the others, Chen didn't know what to say to that. He looked around the small cell. It had a cot, a sink, and a toilet. That was it. No books, no entertainment, nothing to do but sit and think. "Are you hungry?" he asked. Lyra shook her head quickly, but Chen heard her stomach make a noise. He frowned. "When did you last eat?" The food here makes me sick. It tastes wrong." Chen made a mental note to check on that. The girl was clearly not getting proper nutrition. He pulled up a chair and sat down, keeping some distance so she wouldn't feel trapped. "What do you usually eat?" For the next hour, they talked. Lyra was shy at first, but slowly opened up. She told him about Zephyrian food, about her home world, about how different everything was here. Chen found himself forgetting that she was supposed to be the enemy. She was just a scared kid far from home. When his shift ended, Chen went to find Major Phillips. "Sir, the prisoner isn't getting proper nutrition. She can't digest human food properly. She's going to get sick if we don't fix this." Phillips rubbed his forehead. "The food synthesizers only make human food. We don't have Zephyrian nutrients. Then we need to get some. She's no good to us as a bargaining chip if she's dead." Phillips agreed to look into it, but Chen could tell it would take time. Red tape always did. That night, Chen couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the fear in Lyra's eyes and how young she looked. 16 years old. When he was 16, he was worried about girls and football. She was a prisoner of war, held hostage for her mother's crimes. The next morning, Chen arrived for his shift early. He could hear shouting from cell block C before he even got there. When he rounded the corner, he saw guard Kowalski standing outside Lyra's cell yelling at her. "You think you're special because you're the boss's daughter? You're just another bug to me." Through the window, Chen could see Lyra pressed into the corner, shaking. Kowalski was banging on the glass with his fist. "That's enough, Kowalski," Chen said, his voice hard. Kowalski turned around. He was a big man with angry eyes. "Just having a chat with our guest, Sarge, making sure she knows her place. Your shift ended an hour ago." "Get out of here." Kowalski's face got red. "You going soft on the bugs, Chen? Remember what they did to New Manila?" Chen stepped closer. "I remember. I also remember that our job is to keep the prisoner safe and healthy. If Major Phillips hears you've been harassing her, you'll be on report. Now get lost." Kowalski glared at him but walked away. Chen waited until he was gone, then opened the cell door. Lyra was still in the corner, tears streaming down her face. When she saw Chen, she looked surprised. You made him stop." "That's my job," Chen said. "Are you okay?" She nodded, but Chen could see she was still shaking. He sat down in his chair and waited for her to calm down. "Why did you help me?" she asked after a while. Chen thought about it. "Because you're just a kid, and because it's the right thing to do." Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Then she said something in her own language that sounded like a prayer. "What did you say?" "I said, 'Thank you, Guardian Heart.' In my language, it means someone who protects those who cannot protect themselves." Chen felt something strange in his chest. It had been a long time since anyone had called him anything like that. In the war, he was just Sergeant Chen, a soldier who killed the enemy. But this scared alien girl saw something different in him. Maybe there was still some humanity left in him after all. From that day on, Chen made sure he was always on time for his shifts. He brought Lyra books to read and taught her card games to pass the time. When the food situation didn't improve fast enough, he started sneaking her small portions of compatible nutrients from the medical bay. It was against regulations. It could get him court-martialed. But every time he saw Lyra smile when he brought her something that didn't make her sick, Chen knew he was doing the right thing. The war had made him hard. It had made him hate. But protecting this young girl was starting to remind him of who he used to be before the killing started. Chen didn't know it yet, but this assignment would change everything. Not just for him, but for both their species. 3 months passed like slow water. Chen had settled into a routine with Lyra that felt almost normal. Every morning at 0800, he would arrive at her cell with real breakfast, not the synthetic human food that made her sick, but nutrients he had carefully obtained from the medical supplies. It was still against regulations, but Major Phillips had started looking the other way. "Good morning, Guardian Heart," Lyra would say, using the name she had given him. Her English had gotten much better during their long conversations. "Morning, Lyra, how did you sleep?" She had nightmares most nights. Chen had learned to recognize the signs. The dark circles under her eyes, the way she jumped at sudden sounds. War was hard on everyone, but it was especially cruel to children. Today she looked worse than usual. Her shell had a gray tint that worried him. "Bad dreams again?" he asked as he set down her breakfast. Lyra nodded and picked at her food. "I dreamed about home, about my mother's face when she gave the order to attack your colonies. She looked so sad, Guardian Heart. People think she is a monster, but she cried that night. I heard her crying." Chen sat down in his usual chair. Over the months, he had learned that Lyra's mother wasn't the simple villain he had imagined. The Zephyrian sun was dying. Their whole species was facing extinction. Vexara had thought Earth's system was empty when she ordered the attacks. Finding humans there had turned a desperate migration into a war nobody wanted. "Tell me about your home," Chen said. He had learned that getting her to talk about good memories helped with the nightmares. Lyra's eyes brightened a little. Our city is built in the trees, giant trees that touch the sky. My room was high up and I could see the twin moons every night. We have gardens that float in the air held up by gravity stones. And the music. She made a soft sound that might have been humming. Everything sings on my world. The wind, the trees, even the stones have their own songs. Chen tried to imagine it. For months now, he had been learning about Zephyrian culture from Lyra. They weren't the savage insects that human propaganda made them out to be. They were artists and poets, builders and dreamers. They just happened to look different from humans. Would you like to hear a story from my world? Lyra asked. Chen nodded. He had grown to love these stories. Lyra was a natural storyteller, and her tales of floating cities and singing forests helped him forget where they were. She was halfway through a story about brave warriors who rode giant flying creatures when the alarm started. Blaring, Chen jumped to his feet. Red lights flashed in the corridor outside. The base intercom crackled to life. All personnel to battle stations. We have incoming ships. Unknown configuration. All personnel to battle stations. Lyra had gone very still. Her forearms were wrapped around herself again like they had been on the first day. Guardian Heart? What is happening? Chen checked his weapon. I don't know. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. No. Lyra grabbed his arm with one of her hands. Please don't leave me alone. If something happens to you... Chen looked at her frightened face. She was just a kid and she was terrified. His duty was to stay with her, but his instincts told him to get to the command center and find out what was happening. The door to the cell block burst open. Major Phillips ran in, his face grim. Chen, we've got a problem. 3 Zephyrian ships just jumped into the system. They're not responding to our signals and they're heading straight for us. Chen felt his blood go cold. Sir, the peace talks are still going on. These ships aren't part of the official Zephyrian military. We think they might be extremists who want to restart the war, and they're probably here for her. Phillips pointed at Lyra. Lyra had gone very pale. She said something in her own language that sounded like a curse. Lyra, do you know who they might be? She nodded slowly. The Iron Shell Brigade. They are, how do you say, rebels? They think my mother is weak for making peace with humans. They believe the only good human is a dead human. And they want you? They want to kill me. To show that humans cannot protect what they steal. To prove that the peace talks are meaningless. Chen felt something fierce and protective rise up in his chest. Over the past months, Lyra had become more than just his assignment. She was like a little sister to him. The thought of anyone hurting her made him angry in a way that surprised him. That's not going to happen, he said firmly. Major Phillips was already on his radio. All units, prepare for possible boarding action. Lock down all sensitive areas. And somebody get me a line to the Zephyrian peace delegation. The next few hours were chaos. The rebel ships had some kind of stealth technology that made them hard to track. They kept disappearing and reappearing on sensors. Meanwhile, the base was sealed tight with guards at every door. Chen stayed with Lyra in her cell. She was trying to be brave, but he could see how scared she was. When the lights went out and emergency power kicked in, she moved closer to him. Guardian Heart, will you tell me about Earth? Chen understood. She wanted a distraction, so he told her about blue skies and green grass, about oceans that stretched to the horizon and snow-capped mountains. He told her about his childhood in Colorado, about camping trips with his family, about the first time he saw the ocean. It sounds beautiful, Lyra said softly. I always wondered what a world with one sun would look like. Maybe someday you'll see it, Chen said. When this is all over, do you really think the peace will last? Chen looked at her young face. I think there are good people on both sides who want it to work. People like you. Lyra smiled at that, the first real smile he had seen from her all day. The attack came 2 hours later. Chen heard the explosion first, a deep rumble that shook the whole base. Then the sound of weapons fire. His radio crackled. All units, we are being boarded. Repeat, we are being boarded. Multiple breaches in sectors 7 and 9. Chen grabbed his rifle and checked his ammunition. Lyra, get behind the bed and stay down. Guardian Heart, I said stay down. The lights went out completely. Emergency power failed. The only light came from the red glow of Chen's tactical display. He could hear fighting in the corridors outside, getting closer. They're coming for me, Lyra whispered from behind the bed. Let them come, Chen said grimly. They'll have to go through me first. The cell block door exploded inward. Chen heard the distinctive click-click sound of Zephyrian weapons charging up. He positioned himself in front of Lyra's hiding spot and waited. 3 figures in black armor came through the smoke. They were bigger than Lyra, with the thick shells of adult Zephyrian warriors. Their weapons swept the corridor looking for targets. One of them spoke in the Zephyrian language. Chen didn't understand the words, but the tone was clear enough. They were hunting. Chen held his breath and waited for them to pass by. But one of the warriors stopped right in front of Lyra's cell. He turned and looked directly at the door. Chen realized that they could probably smell her. Or maybe they had some other sense that humans didn't understand. Either way, they knew exactly where she was. The warrior raised his weapon toward the door. Chen didn't think. He just acted. He burst out of the cell, firing as he moved. His first shots took the lead warrior by surprise, punching through his armor. The second warrior spun toward him, but Chen was already moving, using the close quarters to his advantage. The third warrior got off a shot that burned past Chen's ear. Chen rolled behind a support beam and came up firing. His shots were precise, aimed at the weak points in Zephyrian armor that he had learned about during the war. When the smoke cleared, all 3 warriors were down. Chen was bleeding from a graze on his arm, but he was alive. "Lyra, are you okay?" She came out from behind the bed, shaking but unhurt. She looked at the 3 bodies, then at Chen. You killed them, to protect me." "That's what Guardians do," Chen said simply. Lyra stared at him for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She hugged him. All 4 of her arms wrapped around him in a gesture that was purely human in its emotion. "Thank you, Guardian Heart. I will never forget this." Chen hugged her back, surprised at how natural it felt. Months ago, the idea of embracing a Zephyrian would have made him sick. Now it felt like the most normal thing in the world. The attack was over within an hour. The rebel ships had fled when the base's defense systems finally came online. Major Phillips found Chen and Lyra in her cell, sharing a meal that Chen had somehow managed to scrounge up despite the chaos. "Quite a fight you put up, Sergeant," Phillips said. "Those 3 warriors were elite troops. You shouldn't have been able to take them alone." Chen shrugged. "I had good motivation, sir." Phillips looked at Lyra, who was sitting close to Chen like he was her big brother. "I can see that." The peace delegation heard about the attack. "They're very grateful that you kept their princess safe." "Princess?" Chen looked at Lyra in surprise. She blushed, if Zephyrians could blush. "I may have left out some details about my family. You're not just Vexara's daughter. You're heir to the throne. Does it matter?" Lyra asked quietly. "I am still just me," Chen smiled. "No, it doesn't matter. You're still just Lyra to me." But even as he said it, Chen realized that everything was about to change. The peace talks were moving faster now, pushed along by the rebel attack. Soon there would be a prisoner exchange, and Lyra would go home to her mother and her floating cities and her singing forests. Chen tried not to think about how much he was going to miss her. The next morning, Major Phillips brought news that Chen had been dreading. The exchange, The day of the exchange dawned gray and cold. Chen had been awake since 0400, unable to sleep. In a few hours, Lyra would be gone, and he would go back to being just another soldier waiting for his next assignment. He found her sitting on her bed, holding the small metal sculpture he had made for her. She looked up when he entered, and he could see that she hadn't slept either. "Today is the day," she said quietly. "Yeah, today's the day." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Over the past 6 months, they had learned to read each other's moods. Chen could tell that Lyra was nervous about seeing her mother again. He was nervous too, though he couldn't quite explain why. "Guardian Heart, will you walk with me to the shuttle bay?" Chen nodded. "Of course." At 1000 hours, Major Phillips came to escort them to the landing pad. The entire base was on high alert. This was the most important prisoner exchange of the war, and nothing could go wrong. Chen helped Lyra gather her few belongings. She had arrived with nothing, but over the months she had collected small gifts from Chen and a few other sympathetic guards. A book of human poetry, a picture of Earth from space, a collection of interesting rocks from the facility's courtyard. "I want to give you something too," Lyra said as they walked down the corridor. She pulled a small object from her bag. It was a pendant made from what looked like crystal, carved into the shape of a tree. "It is from my home world," she explained. "A piece of one of the singing trees. When you hold it up to the light, you can hear an echo of its song." Chen took the pendant carefully, When he tilted it toward the ceiling lights, he could swear he heard a faint musical note, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Lyra, I can't take this. It must be incredibly valuable." "It is priceless," she agreed. "That is why I want you to have it. So you will remember that my people are not monsters. We make beautiful things too." Chen fastened the pendant around his neck, tucking it under his uniform. "I'll treasure it." They reached the shuttle bay just as the Zephyrian ships appeared on the horizon. Chen felt his breath catch. He had seen Zephyrian warships before, but only while they were trying to kill him. These ships were different. They were sleek and graceful, with flowing lines that looked almost organic. Art as much as technology. The lead ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of any human vessel Chen had ever seen. As it settled onto the landing pad, Chen could see intricate patterns carved into its hull. This wasn't just a military ship. It was a work of art, my mother's flagship, Lyra said softly. The singing wind. A ramp extended from the ship's belly. Chen watched as figures began to emerge. First came a group of warriors in ceremonial armor, their shells polished to a mirror shine. Then came advisors and diplomats, their shells marked with complex patterns that Chen guessed indicated rank or status. Finally, High Matriarch Vexara herself stepped into view. Chen had seen pictures of her in intelligence briefings, but seeing her in person was different. She was enormous, standing nearly 8 feet tall. Her shell was deep black with silver markings that seemed to shift and flow as she moved. 6 arms moved with perfect coordination, each gesture deliberate and controlled. This was a being who commanded armies and ruled worlds. But as she walked toward them, Chen noticed something unexpected. Her movements were careful, almost hesitant. Her large dark eyes were fixed on Lyra with an expression that was unmistakably maternal. Lyra had gone very still beside him. Chen could hear her breathing quicken. "It's okay," he said quietly. "She's your mother. She's been worried about you." Vexara stopped about 10 feet away from them. Her eyes moved from Lyra to Chen, studying him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. When she spoke, her voice was deep and resonant like distant thunder. "Daughter, you are well?" "Yes, mother. I am well." Vexara's gaze shifted back to Chen. "This is the human who has been your guardian." It wasn't a question. Chen stepped forward and saluted, unsure of the proper protocol for meeting an alien head of state. "Sergeant Marcus Chen, Earth Defense Corps. It has been my honor to ensure your daughter's safety and well-being." Vexara studied him for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised everyone present. She spoke directly to Lyra in their own language, her voice gentle and questioning. Lyra responded at length, gesturing toward Chen several times. Chen caught a few words he had learned over the months, including the Zephyrian term for guardian heart that Lyra had taught him. As the conversation continued, Chen noticed that Vexara's expression was changing. The formal mask of a military leader was giving way to something more personal. At one point, she looked at Chen with what might have been surprise. Finally, Lyra finished speaking. Vexara was quiet for a long moment, then spoke again in English. "My daughter tells me an interesting story, Sergeant Chen. She says that you risked your career to ensure she received proper nutrition, that you protected her from guards who would have mistreated her, that you fought 3 elite warriors to keep her safe from extremists who wanted her dead." Chen shifted uncomfortably. "I was just doing my job, Your Majesty." "No," Vexara said firmly. "Your job was to keep her prisoner. What you did was much more than that." She turned back to Lyra and spoke again in Zephyrian. This time Chen caught the word Kethvar, which Lyra had once explained meant something like life-debt guardian in their culture. Lyra nodded enthusiastically and spoke again, pointing at Chen. Chen noticed that some of the Zephyrian diplomats were looking surprised, even shocked. Vexara was quiet for a very long time. Then she stepped closer to Chen, close enough that he had to crane his neck to look up at her. "Sergeant Chen, in our culture, there is a concept called Kethvar. It means one who has saved not just a life, but a soul. My daughter tells me that when she arrived here, she hated all humans. She wanted them all to die. But you showed her kindness when you could have shown cruelty. You protected her when you could have ignored her suffering. You made her see that humans could be good." Chen glanced at Lyra, who was watching the exchange with bright eyes. "She's a good kid, Your Majesty. She deserved to be treated with dignity." "Yes, she did. And because you gave her that dignity, She now speaks of humans as potential allies instead of eternal enemies. Do you understand what this means for our peoples? Chen was beginning to, and it made him nervous. Vexara turned to address the human delegation, which included Major Phillips and several other senior officers. According to our law and tradition, Sergeant Chen has earned the status of Kethvar. He has saved my daughter's soul, and therefore has a permanent place in our family. I formally request that he be allowed to accompany us home, so that he may receive proper honor for his service. The human officers looked stunned. Major Phillips stepped forward. Your Majesty, with respect, Sergeant Chen is a human soldier. His place is with his own people. Vexara's eyes flashed. His place is wherever honor demands it be. He has earned the right to choose. All eyes turned to Chen. He felt like the weight of both species was suddenly resting on his shoulders. This wasn't just about him anymore. This was about the future relationship between humans and Zephyrians. He looked at Lyra, who was watching him with hopeful eyes. If I come with you, he said carefully. What would that mean exactly? Vexara's expression softened slightly. It would mean that you are family. A guardian brother to my daughter, a son to me. It would mean honor and respect among our people. It would also mean that you could serve as a bridge between our species, helping us understand each other. Chen felt the crystal pendant against his chest, warm from his body heat. He thought about the past 6 months, about how much his understanding of the Zephyrians had changed because of one scared girl who had needed a protector. And if I choose to stay with my own people, then you stay with our gratitude and respect, but... Vexara paused. But I think you already know that your path lies elsewhere. My daughter has told me about your conversations. You dream of exploration, of discovering new worlds. You are a wanderer at heart, trapped in a soldier's uniform. Chen stared at her. How could she know that? He had never told anyone about his childhood dreams of being an explorer, of seeing alien worlds and meeting new species. But somehow during their long talks, Lyra had figured it out. I need time to think, Chen said. Vexara nodded. Of course, but not too much time. The decision must be made today. For the next hour, Chen found himself pulled aside by various human officers. Colonel Morrison had been called in by Secure Communication and was strongly advising against going. The Intelligence Corps wanted to debrief him on everything he had learned about Zephyrian culture. The Diplomatic Corps was frantically trying to figure out the political implications. But in the end, Chen found himself sitting alone with Lyra in a small conference room, away from all the noise and pressure. You don't have to come, she said quietly. I know your people need you too. Do you want me to come? More than anything, she admitted. But I want you to choose because it is right for you, not because you feel sorry for me. Chen looked at this remarkable young being who had changed his entire view of the universe. 6 months ago, he had been a soldier who knew his enemy clearly. Now he was a guardian who had learned that. The first thing Chen noticed about the Zephyrian homeworld was the singing. As their ship descended through the atmosphere, a low, harmonic resonance filled the air. It wasn't music exactly, but it wasn't random noise either. It was like the whole planet was humming in harmony with itself. The singing trees, Lyra explained, pressing her face to the window beside him. They respond to changes in air pressure. When ships pass through the atmosphere, they sing to welcome travelers home. Chen stared out at the landscape below. Lyra's descriptions hadn't prepared him for the reality. The trees were massive beyond imagination, their trunks easily a mile across and reaching up into the clouds. Cities were built around and inside them, connected by graceful bridges that seemed to flow like rivers between the branches. It's beautiful, he said quietly. Wait until you see our city, Lyra said excitedly. Mother, are we going directly to the great tree? Vexara, who had been quiet during most of the journey, nodded. The council is eager to meet our new guardian brother. News of his choice has already reached them. Chen felt a flutter of nervousness. What kind of reception should I expect? Curiosity mostly, Vexara replied. You're the first human to be welcomed into a Zephyrian family. Many of my people still see humans as enemies. Others see you as a symbol of possible peace. Both groups want to understand what kind of being you really are. The ship settled onto a landing platform that was carved directly into the trunk of one of the great trees. As the ramp lowered, Chen was hit by a wave of sensations. The air smelled like flowers and growing things. The ground beneath his feet felt alive, slightly springy like it was part of a living organism, And everywhere the gentle singing continued. A group of Zephyrians was waiting for them, their shells displaying colors and patterns that Chen was beginning to recognize as formal court dress. They bowed deeply as Vexara approached, but their eyes kept drifting to Chen with obvious curiosity. "Mother," Lyra whispered. Some of them looked nervous. Chen could see what she meant. Several of the Zephyrians had their hands positioned near weapons that hung from their shells. Not threatening exactly, but ready. Vexara noticed too. She spoke sharply in Zephyrian, her tone clearly one of command. The nervous guards immediately relaxed their positions, though they continued to watch Chen carefully. "What did you tell them?" Chen asked. "I reminded them that you are family now, and that anyone who treats you with disrespect will answer to me personally." As they walked through the city, Chen felt like he was moving through a living work of art. The buildings weren't constructed so much as grown, flowing organically from the tree itself. Bridges curved gracefully between levels, their surfaces carved with intricate patterns that seemed to tell stories. And everywhere there were Zephyrians, stopping to stare at the human walking beside their matriarch. Some looked curious, others suspicious. A few younger ones seemed excited, chattering to each other in their musical language. "Are they talking about me?" Chen asked. Lyra grinned. "Most of them have never seen a human up close. They're saying you look smaller than they expected, but also that you move like a warrior. Is that good or bad?" "It's accurate," Vexara said with amusement. "You do move like a warrior. It's in the way you hold yourself, the way your eyes constantly scan for threats. My people recognize these things." They entered the great tree through a massive archway that was easily 50 feet tall. Inside, Chen felt like he had stepped into a cathedral. The ceiling stretched up into darkness, supported by natural columns that were part of the tree itself. Soft light filtered down from somewhere far above, giving everything a gentle golden glow. "The heart chamber," Lyra explained. "This is where the council meets, where important decisions are made." "Mother, will Chen need to speak before the full council?" "Not immediately," Vexara replied. "First, he needs to understand our ways, and we need to understand his." They climbed a spiral path that wound around the inside of the tree trunk. Chen tried not to look down as they rose higher and higher. Through openings in the trunk, he could see the city spread out below, and beyond that, an endless forest of singing trees stretching to the horizon. "How many Zephyrians live here?" he asked. "In this city?" "About 2 million. On the whole planet, nearly 40 million. Vexara's pattern shifted to sad colors. "It was 60 million before the war with your people began." Chen felt a stab of guilt. He had killed Zephyrians during the war, probably dozens of them. He had never thought about their families, their homes, their lives beyond the battlefield. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Vexara stopped walking and turned to look at him. "You have nothing to apologize for, guardian brother. You were a soldier following orders just as our warriors were. The blame lies with those who made the decisions, not those who carried them out. Including you? Especially me." Vexara's voice was heavy with regret. "I gave the order to attack your colonies. I told myself it was necessary for our survival, but that doesn't change the fact that millions died because of my choices." They continued climbing in thoughtful silence. Finally, they reached a level that was clearly residential. The corridors here were smaller, more intimate. Soft lighting came from bioluminescent panels that were part of the tree itself. "Your quarters are here," Vexara said, stopping in front of a doorway. "Adjacent to Lyra's rooms, as befits a guardian brother." Chen looked around the space that would be his new home. It was larger than he had expected, with a living area, a bedroom, and what looked like a study. Everything was curved and organic, carved directly from the living wood of the tree. Large windows looked out over the city and the forest beyond. "It's incredible," he said, "but I feel like I should be staying in guest quarters or something. This looks like it's meant for family." "You are family," Lyra said firmly. "Guardian Heart, you saved my life and my soul. In our culture, that makes you my brother in all the ways that matter." Vexara nodded. "The bond of Kethvar is not taken lightly among our people. You have earned your place here through your actions, not through birth. Some would say that makes it even more meaningful." Over the next few days, Chen began to understand just how different Zephyrian society was from human civilization. There was no money as humans understood it. Instead, everything was based on contribution and need. Those who could contribute did so according to their abilities. Those who needed help received it without question. "But what about people who don't want to contribute?" Chen asked Lyra during one of their walks through the city. "It happens rarely," she replied. When it does, the community tries to understand why. Usually there is some underlying problem: sickness, grief, fear. These things are addressed with compassion, not punishment. And if someone is just lazy, Lyra made a sound that might have been laughter. Then they are lazy in comfort, but they also live with the knowledge that they are not contributing to their community's well-being. Social pressure is usually enough to motivate change. Chen found the concept fascinating. Human society was built on competition and individual achievement. Zephyrian society seemed to be built on cooperation and collective well-being. He was beginning to understand why the war had started. When your people's survival depended on everyone working together, the idea of abandoned worlds filled with resources must have seemed like a gift from the universe. The Zephyrians hadn't attacked Earth out of malice, but out of desperate need. "Tell me about your son," Chen said one evening as they sat on a balcony overlooking the city. Vexara's patterns shifted to deep blues and purples. Colors Chen was learning indicated sadness or worry. "It is dying," she said simply. "Our scientists estimate we have perhaps 50 years before it becomes too unstable to support life. We have been searching for new worlds for decades, but most systems we find are already inhabited by species that consider us invaders. What about uninhabited worlds? Few and far between. And most lack the specific conditions our people need to survive. When our long-range scouts detected your system, the initial scans suggested empty worlds with perfect atmospheric conditions. It seemed like an answer to our prayers," Chen winced. "Until you found out we were already there." "Yes. By then, the first colony ships had already launched. I faced an impossible choice. Let my people die slowly as our sun failed, or fight for worlds that could save us. So you chose to fight." "I chose wrong," Vexara said firmly. "I should have made contact, tried to negotiate. Your people might have been willing to share the system. Instead, I assumed the worst and ordered attacks. Millions died because of my failure to imagine a better way." Chen was quiet for a long moment. "What would you do differently now?" "Everything," Vexara replied. "I would send diplomats, not warriors. I would explain our situation honestly and ask for help. I would try to find solutions that didn't require anyone to die." "And you think humans would have listened?" Vexara looked at him with something that might have been hope. "You listened to my daughter. You saw past her appearance to the person beneath. If one human could do that, perhaps others could too." That night, Chen lay in his new bed listening to the songs of the trees. The melody was different at night, deeper, more soothing. It was like the whole planet was singing him a lullaby. He thought about his old life, his old certainties. 6 months ago, he had known exactly who he was and what he believed. Now everything was different. He was living among the people he had been trained to kill, and they felt more like family than Chen had been living on the Zephyrian homeworld for 8 months when the assassins came. He was in the middle of a language lesson with Lyra, practicing the complex tonal patterns that gave Zephyrian speech its musical quality, when the alarms started screaming. The singing trees went silent all at once, as if the entire planet was holding its breath. "That's the emergency signal," Lyra said, her shell patterns shifting to alarmed colors. "Someone has breached the security perimeter." Chen was already moving, his soldier's instincts taking over. "Where would they take you if there was a threat?" "The secure chambers deep in the heart of the great tree. But Guardian Heart, you should come with me. If there are enemies here, they might be looking for both of us." Chen shook his head. "My job is to protect you, not hide with you. Get to the secure chambers. I'll find out what's happening and make sure you're safe." Before Lyra could argue, Chen was out the door and running down the curved corridors. Other Zephyrians were moving with purpose, but not panic. These people had lived through a war. They knew how to respond to danger. Chen found Vexara in the command center, surrounded by advisors and displays showing the city's defense grid. Her patterns were shifting rapidly between tactical colors and maternal worry. "Chen, you should be with Lyra in the secure chambers. Lyra is safe. What's the situation?" Vexara gestured to the displays. 3 ships penetrated our outer defenses using stolen access codes. They've landed near the agricultural districts and deployed ground forces. We've identified the attackers as members of the Iron Shell Brigade. Chen felt ice in his veins. The same extremist group that had attacked Facility 7 months ago. "Are they here for Lyra?" "For both of you, we believe. Our intelligence suggests they want to assassinate you both to prove that cooperation between our species is impossible." Your death would show that humans can't be trusted, and Lyra's death would eliminate the strongest voice for peace in the next generation. One of the advisors approached with a tactical display. Matriarch, the attackers are moving toward the great tree. Our forces are engaging them, but they have advanced weapons and seem to know our defensive patterns. Chen studied the display, his military training automatically analyzing the tactical situation. They're not trying to win a battle. This is a targeted strike. They'll try to punch through your defenses at the weakest point and get to their target as quickly as possible. Our warriors are moving to intercept them, another advisor said. Chen shook his head. That's what they want. A big confrontation with lots of casualties. It'll make great propaganda for them either way. Instead, you should let them get closer, then hit them when they're committed to their attack route. Vexara looked at him sharply. Explain. Chen pointed to the tactical display. Look at their movement pattern. They're heading for the main entrance to the Great Tree, probably because that's the only route they know. If you pull back your outer defenses and make it look like they're succeeding, they'll commit to that approach. Then you can trap them in the entrance chamber. That puts civilians at risk, one of the advisors objected. Less risk than a running battle through the city, Chen replied, and I have an idea for how to minimize even that risk. 20 minutes later, Chen was making his way through the lower levels of the Great Tree, armed with both human and Zephyrian weapons. Vexara had agreed to his plan, though she clearly didn't like the idea of him taking such a direct role. The plan was simple in concept, if dangerous in execution. The Zephyrian forces would stage a fighting withdrawal, drawing the attackers into the entrance chamber. Once the Iron Shell Brigade was committed to their assault, Chen would attack them from behind while the defenders hit them from the front. It relied on Chen's understanding of human tactics and his ability to move through Zephyrian architecture that the attackers wouldn't be familiar with. It also relied on his willingness to put himself directly in harm's way. Chen found his position in a gallery overlooking the entrance chamber just as the first explosions echoed through the Great Tree. The attackers were blasting their way through the outer doors, probably expecting heavy resistance that wasn't coming. Through his earpiece, Chen heard Vexara's voice directing the tactical withdrawal. Her forces were falling back according to plan, making it look like the attackers were overwhelming them. Guardian brother, came Vexara's voice. Are you in position? Affirmative, mother. I can see the entrance chamber clearly. Chen had grown comfortable with calling Vexara mother over the past months. It had felt strange at first, but now it seemed natural. She had welcomed him into her family completely, and he had come to think of her as a parent in truth, not just in name. The great doors burst open. Iron Shell Brigade soldiers poured through, their black armor gleaming with weapons and sensors. Chen counted 12 of them, elite warriors armed with the best equipment their organization could steal or buy. They moved with confidence, clearly believing they had broken through the Zephyrian defenses. Their leader, a massive warrior with silver markings on his shell, gestured for his team to spread out and secure the chamber. Now, Chen whispered into his comm. He opened fire from the gallery, his shots carefully aimed at weak points in the attacker's armor. At the same time, Zephyrian warriors appeared from concealed positions around the chamber, catching the Iron Shell Brigade in a perfect crossfire. The battle was brief, but intense. The attackers were skilled and well-equipped, but they were caught completely off guard. Within minutes, half of them were down. The leader of the Iron Shell Brigade looked up at Chen's position and snarled something in Zephyrian that probably wasn't complimentary. He raised a heavy weapon and fired at the gallery. Chen threw himself sideways as the beam punched through the stone where he had been standing. He rolled to new cover and returned fire, but the leader was already moving, using his fallen comrades as cover. Chen. Vexara's voice was sharp with worry. The leader is heading for the stairs to your position. Chen could see the Iron Shell leader climbing the curved stairway toward the gallery. The warrior was too heavily armored for Chen's weapons to penetrate from this range, and there was nowhere to retreat to. Chen made a decision that surprised even him. Instead of falling back, he ran forward toward the enemy. The Iron Shell leader was clearly not expecting a human to charge directly at him. Chen used that moment of surprise to get close enough for his weapons to be effective, putting 3 shots into weak points in the armor before the warrior could react. But the leader was tough. Even wounded, he lashed out with one of his secondary arms, catching Chen across the chest and sending him flying. Chen hit the stone railing of the gallery hard, feeling ribs crack. The Iron Shell leader raised his weapon for a killing shot, and Lyra appeared behind him. Chen's heart stopped. She was supposed to be in the secure chambers, safe and protected. Instead, she was standing behind a heavily armed assassin with nothing but a small ceremonial blade in her hands. "You want to kill the human?" she said loudly in Zephyrian. "You'll have to kill me first." The leader spun around, clearly as surprised as Chen was. "Princess Lyra, perfect. I can eliminate both threats at once." "I don't think so," Lyra said calmly. And then she did something Chen had never seen before. She began to sing. It wasn't the casual humming that Zephyrians often did. This was something formal, ritualistic. The sound echoed through the chamber with a harmonic resonance that seemed to come from the great tree itself. The Iron Shell leader froze. Around the chamber, every Zephyrian stopped what they were doing and listened. Chen didn't understand the words, but he could feel the power in them. This was something ancient, something sacred to Zephyrian culture. When Lyra finished, the chamber was completely silent. "What you just heard," she said in a voice that carried despite its youth, "was the Song of Binding. By our oldest laws, anyone who harms me or my guardian brother after hearing that song will be cast out from all Zephyrian society forever. Their name will be forgotten, their deeds erased, their bloodline shamed for all generations." The Iron Shell leader's weapon wavered. Chen could see the uncertainty in his posture. "You think I care about your ancient superstitions?" the warrior said, but his voice lacked conviction. "I think you care about your family," Lyra replied calmly. "I think you care about your children and their children. The Song of Binding doesn't just exile you. It erases you from history itself. Is your hatred really worth that price?" For a long moment, nobody moved. Then slowly, the Iron Shell leader lowered his weapon. "This isn't over," he said. "Yes, it is," said Vexara, appearing in the entrance to the gallery with a squad of her personal guards. "You and your surviving followers will be exiled from Zephyrian space. If you ever return, the Song of Binding will be invoked again, and next time there will be no mercy." The surviving attackers were taken away. Medics tended to Chen's injuries, which turned out to be less serious than they had first appeared. But as the immediate crisis passed, he found himself staring at Lyra in amazement. "What you did back there," he said. "That was incredible, and incredibly dangerous."